Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Hazel, for the invitation. This is a great opportunity for me to be back in Edinburgh and talking about wolves and bears, which is my favorite subject. I like to remind that this is my second time in Edinburgh. And the first time was in 1978, which tells you a lot how old I am and how committed I am to this topic. Because that invitation in 1978 was to a congress organized here in Edinburgh to discuss the imminent wolf reintroduction to Scotland. So we are now 37 years after. We may still be debating and discussing that. I'm going to talk about the large carnivores in general. I'm going to talk about the challenge of maintaining viable population in human-dominated landscape. I will rarely mention, actually I will not mention Scotland at all, but you will gather from my presentation where I stand. And if you need clarification at the end, we can open the debate and the discussion and discuss a particular topic for Scotland, but not for the moment. First, acknowledgement. What I'm going to say is the product of the interaction of a fantastic group of experts, the Large Carnivore Initiative for Europe, which is an IUCN group of experts dealing with 5 species. But I'm not going to talk about the Iberian lynx, which is a special case. I will mostly refer to these 4, and actually mostly to the wolf. The reason why large carnivores are a difficult topic for conservation is easily explained. They have huge home ranges, sometimes up to 1,000 square kilometers. They can move over long distance. They normally live at very low density. Their population process function at huge scales. And for their conservation, we need cooperation, which is the most difficult thing you can buy in these days across Europe. Large carnivores are almost everywhere with some notable exceptions, including this island. And otherwise, they will be 30, I actually should say 32 now, because we do have 1 wolf in the Netherlands and 1 wolf in Denmark. So we cover another 2 countries, just to say. And where they are, the Large Carnivore Initiative, we compiled a distribution map, and these are the most updated distribution maps. We published in a paper in Science last year, at the end, December 2014. So this is the wolf distribution. A large population in Spain, a large population here in the Apennines, or from the southern tip of Italy to the Alps, very close to Rome. A population in the Alps expanding into France and into Switzerland. Here, the Dinaric Balkan. Here, look at this, the shape. This is the Carpathian Mountains. You will see this shape in all the maps for the other large carnivores. That's a stronghold for all population, for all large carnivores. Then we do have this Polish population, which is moving into Germany and dispersing animals into Denmark and to the Netherlands, then the Fennoscandia population and the Baltic. I don't want to spend too much time on these maps, but I just flag where the most interesting situations are. Here is the Abruzzo bear population. It's a small one, 50, 52, but they are very precious. They are just a 1-hour drive from Rome. This one in the Trentino, northern Italy, is the only bear population that has been actively reintroduced. So you can reintroduce large carnivores, and successfully. There have been some other bear reintroduction in the Pyrenees, but they basically failed. They were all shot. Then we have a huge population up in Sweden. And this is the lynx, again, a big population in Fennoscandia, nice population here in Switzerland, French, and then again here in the Dinaric, and the usual shape of the Carpathian Mountains. The Wolverine is just basically an affair of Sweden and Norway, so it's not really of much interest for the rest of Europe. If we compare, if we overlap the distribution of all these species, then we see that, again, Phenoscandia plays a major role, and then the Carpathian and the Dinaric. Okay, numbers, because everybody wants to know how many you have. I never really understood the obsessions for knowing the numbers. You don't ask how many beavers or how many deer you have. Yes, maybe you ask it, because it is too many anyway. But for wolves and bears and lynx, there is this obsession of finding out how many there are. Okay, these are the numbers. Don't tell us very much, because these numbers are scattered all across Europe, and these are bold figures. Some of them are really rough. The most interesting thing you can draw out of these figures is that we have more wolves than North America, which is very important, more wolves than the United States for sure. And so Europe is normally considered, a country utilized, too much degraded compared to the wilderness of North America. Well, think twice. Of course, behind those figures, you have a huge variety of quality of data. In Sweden, they have the complete pedigree of all the wolf populations in Sweden. Fantastic data, this one. In the Apennines, in central Italy, the only way of counting wolves is through modeling. So we come up with estimates with huge variation around. So behind those figures, they are not always the same quality of monitoring and data collecting. But what is most important is that large carnivores in general are increasing all over Europe. This is the fact that is of most concern and interest for conservation. Here is the wolf, and you can see these red arrows showing the expansion, the tendencies of expansion here in Sweden, from Poland into Germany, from Slovakia down to Hungary. And here these two cross, these two arrows here, actually they cross here just north of Verona, where a wolf from the former Yugoslavian countries and a wolf from the Alps met and formed the first pair. So the two populations merging. And here again in Iberia, the wolf is expanding, not really very much westward, because there we do have the Basque country, and the Basques are very tough, and they don't allow any wolves to come through alive. So if you look at the figure, I mean, we do have from the 60s, 70s to today, range actually tripled for most of the species. And if you compare the map, you can see huge expansion. Look here for the wolf in Scandinavia. There was none in the 60s. Now we do have all these. Here in the Alps. In Germany, it's amazing. In 2000, we just had one pack here. In 15 years, we do have 37 packs. So wolves expand rapidly. I don't mention Scotland at all. I just give you figures so that you can digest this information and put them in the context. They expand very rapidly, but even lynx can do quite well, and bears are an amazing example. Here in Scandinavia, the population was, in Sweden, the population was reduced down to less than 200, I guess, around that. Anyway, I can't remember exactly the figure. Today, we estimate 3,500 bears in Sweden. So, this population can really expand very fast. Why they are expanding so fast? The answer is that we don't know. We really don't know. There are certainly several factors playing a role. Some of them are the outcome of active policies, but some are just the outcome of historical changes. So there is a lot of abandonment of marginal areas, And so there is a substantial changes in land use patterns. There is an increase in wild prey. For example, all of Italy is now full of wild boar and deer. And so obviously, large carnivores take advantage of that. Some natural recovery of these species. There has been some support from the human side. The Habitat Directive is protecting these species, and national laws are protecting. Some changes in human attitude, maybe, sometimes, with a lot of caveats. Some reintroduction, actually only the bear, and the lynx have been reintroduced. The wolf has never been reintroduced anywhere in Europe. And of course, legislation. However, telling which of these factors has a bigger impact, we just don't know. It's extremely difficult. And then what we can draw at the end is that it's true that the large carnivore population have increased across Europe, but the current management system have not secured stability of the relationship with humans at all. The current positive trends can easily be reversed, and we can see signs in some of the countries. And then there are new threats coming out. Hybridization, for sure, wolf-dog hybridization, even though it has been there for a long time, and ecologists, we ecologists have been flagging the problem for many years, but geneticists denied it just because they didn't have the techniques. Now they do have the techniques to distinguish wolves from dogs, and now is a problem. And then border fencing, this is just the last of the threat. I know we are touching on a serious human tragedy, which is the problem of refugees, but I mean, this is a tragedy also for wildlife. Of course, it counts much less, but just to flag the issue. Many countries are building a huge border fence that actually cut across population and cut across the movement of many large carnivores. And this is just a picture of one of the first hybrids back in '75, wolf-dog hybrids, but I'm not touching. So there are many unresolved problems still out there. And this is the list. I'm going to touch on each one of them very briefly. The first one is fragmentation of management policy, poor law enforcement, management of livestock depredation, human conflicts, and large-scale socioeconomic policy. The first one is fragmentation of management policy. There is a huge diversity of management philosophy, attitude, legislation working across Europe. And we do have two European-wide policy treaties, let's say the Habitat Directive and the Berne Convention. They cover almost all continents, and yet both of them rely on the individual countries to implement them. So there is not an overall management approach. And this is very important. Look at this. This is the border between Italy, France, and Switzerland. And the gray shade are the territories of the wolf packs. Most of them are transboundary. It's inconceivable to manage these animals in different ways at the two sides of the border. And France and Italy are not at war. They could collaborate, but they don't. At technical level, at scientist level, of course we do collaborate very well. But at institutional level, none. It's impossible. Only once in 10 years I managed to get the Minister of Environment of Italy and the Minister of Environment, not even the Minister, sorry, the Director General of the two countries to meet, only once. Forget about Switzerland, that's another world, another continent. And not only Switzerland, but in particular we are talking of the canton of Valais here. Is anybody from Valais here? No. Well, it's just impossible to deal them. They are really a world apart within Switzerland. Can you imagine within Europe? So in Sweden, again, and this wolf, it's an amazing story. This was caught, I mean, actually it was not caught, had a car accident here near Parma on the Po Valley, and was not hit badly. So the vet called us, and we put out radio collars, and the animals start to come down, then decided to go west, came down to 4 kilometers from the Genoa harbor, and then went on, went almost down to Nice, didn't like, came back, and then was finally killed in Italy by other wolves in another wolf pack. So 1,200 kilometers. So wolves travel long distances and in just 317 days. It's very difficult to talk of different populations within Europe. We will speak of population. I will mention that, but in a particular context. Biologically speaking, it's just one population because wolves can move everywhere. We do have two wolves males near Barcelona. They went from Italy all across southern France and went into Barcelona. There's been one Italian wolf living near Bonn in Germany. From Torino to Bonn, lived there for 1 year, undisturbed, until it was hit by a car. So they can go everywhere. Huh? I don't mention Scotland. Okay, this is another beautiful story of non-collaboration. This was the famous to the European. I know that in UK probably the story came very lightly, but the JJ1 story is known all over Germany because this is one of the bears reintroduced in northern Italy. Is a male, a young male, and as all young male bear, dispersed and went north, across Austria, entered to Germany, and in Germany was all the newspaper, had headline, welcome back, JJ1. JJ1 was our, the way we call it, but they call it Bruno. I don't know why, but anyway. Yeah, call it, welcome back. After 300 years, 400 years, I can't remember. The bears are back. Then this poor guy, JJ1, killed a dozen chicken and 3 sheep. And even look at the donkey in a bad way. So that was the end of JJ1. Katastrophen, all the headlines. And so the German authorities decided that was too much, and they killed it. So the same animal crossed 3 countries with 3 different management regimes. It's impossible. And fragmentation is not only at international level, but also at national level. Many countries in Europe are federal, and you have internal borders. Here in Spain, Galicia managed the wolves in a certain way, Castilla and León in a different way, Madrid in a different way, and so on. Italy is not, but in Germany it's the same. Second problem is law enforcement. The law is poorly enforced almost everywhere. And there is the most common approach is what I call is a sort of a laissez-faire. You just protect the species on paper, and then poachers are rarely persecuted. There is a huge diversity of conflicts, of course, between humans and large carnivores. Depredation of livestock, competition with hunters, and so on. And I'll just go over them very briefly. The competition with hunters is not widespread. It's not the same all over. For example, in central Italy, in the Apennines in general, we don't have a problem with hunters. But in the Alps, we do. In Sweden, we do. In Norway, we also do. Then we have predation on domestic animals, of course. Of course, we do have, it's easy. I mean, free-ranging livestock is just a fiesta for all the large carnivores. There is nothing stopping them to access the animals. They are killed in big numbers. And in Sweden, a particular case of conflict arises because of the predation of wolves on hunting dogs, and some of them are very valuable animals beside the emotional bond with, of the owner. And then, of course, we do have a clash of conflicts. You know, when we speak of large carnivores, but particularly of wolves, immediately we have those who hate the wolf and those who sanctify the wolf, rarely in between. It's actually up to, I mean, each of us can stand anywhere, you know, left or center or right of this continuum of between love and hate. But then we should distinguish the values from the fact. Fact is a different thing. It's very difficult to keep them separated. And the perceptions are very often very, very difficult. People feel very strongly against or in favor of wolves, for example. Bears a little bit less, but wolves really are a very strong image in our stories. The Little Red Riding Hood syndrome is still very, very powerful and is out there. And we all think that it's very difficult to approach this kind of problem with facts because the attitude, the negative attitude are actually built on, not on fact, and on a completely different basis. I come back to that if I have time. There is a huge cultural difference, and you know, especially in France, I've seen people bringing thousands of sheep downtown Cannes or Nice just for protest. And the livestock interaction is still a huge problem. There is a persisting, actually increasing livestock carnivores conflict almost everywhere. And the way of dealing with this problem is extremely different across Europe. So we do have some compensation program. We do have livestock supporting system. And there is a kind of distribution of livestock are very, very different. The way shepherds handle or manage their sheep in the Apennines is completely different from the way they handle in northern France, for example, or in Germany, for example. So it's a problem that is still there, has not been solved, but probably will never be solved. So how do we cope with that? You know, livestock in general, it's easy prey. It's easy prey. Those who tell us that if you put out many deer, wolves will prefer eating deer than sheep are not telling the truth. Wolves are intelligent animals, very intelligent. So they go for what is easiest, not for what, and chasing a group of deer is always more dangerous than chasing a group of sheep. And the number of attacks can be enormous. This is an old statistic. It stops in 2010, but it's great. I like it anyway. And it shows you how the problem is growing, can grow to enormous amount. How much is the damage? We don't know. We tried in year 2000, so it's a long time ago. This goes back in year 2000. We tried only once to collect this information, and it's a nightmare. In fact, it doesn't exist. Some countries have a very, very good figure. Some others, they just don't have anything. But so take these numbers as an order of magnitude. Don't take them as a real cost. So in the order of magnitude is a bear costs 1.5 million. It could be 3 million. I wouldn't be surprised. Lynx, 4. Wolf, 5, 6. It could be 10, 15. It doesn't matter. What it matters is that we are around those order of magnitude. And what is it? It's nothing. It's peanuts for national economies. It's less than 20 meters of one highway. So we can afford, Europe can afford this. Fine. But at local level, people cannot afford. In some marginal areas, even the loss of one land is a tragedy. So we cannot discard the issue by saying, oh, Europe is rich. We can pay 50 million a year just to have wolves and bears. We still have the duty to solve the problem at the local level as much as we can. And the way to do that is normally declined in 4 different actions. One is prevent. Prevention is the key. But people don't want to do it because it implies more work. Prevention is crucial. Compensation for losses. In between, you can consider some control. But somehow, people prefer to go straight to point 2 and period, only that. The way is to kill wolves, to kill bears. No, the way is to use 1, 2, 3 together. And of course, research, not because we are academics, we want to do research, because if you don't have the data, what the hell are you doing over there? Nobody knows, okay? Well, prevention methods have been there for ages, millennia. Of course, not the electric fence, they've been more recent, but this guy has been there for 3,000 years at least. And this is the most effective prevention measure. Of course, you need to know how to handle. And it's not easy. You have to have the shepherd, you have to have the big guy, and you have to have, if possible, the little guy who is hysterical and always active, and he spot the wolf or the bear, bark, call the big guy who comes. He is not afraid. He's a bit stupid. They have been selected to be stupid. No, really, it's not a joke. It's a serious thing. Because their role is not to fight with wolves and bears at all. If they fight, they will lose. So their role is to stand and disrupt the attack sequence of the wolf. And he will bark and call the bigger guy who comes either with a gun or with a stick and chase the wolf away. This has been working for thousands of years and has been working, which means that the losses are not zero, but the losses are minimal and can be tolerated. Every shepherd in Abruzzo say, oh yeah, if I lose 2, 3, 5 sheep a year to wolves, who cares? And everybody would know that the normal mortality in a sheep flock is probably 10%. I don't know, something like that, depends on countries. Okay, we do have good science. I don't have time to go into that. We do have good science supporting the fact that these animals are actually the solution for prevention. And then, of course, compensation, which has a huge variety across Europe. And we do have payments for reported verified damage, most cases across Europe, down to this 0.4, which is a very advanced method, payment before the damage. In a way, you pay for the risk, for taking the risk of living with carnivores. Even though this approach has been debated whether is acceptable under the European laws, because it can be considered a state aid and should not be accepted. But the third one is probably the best one. Payments conditional to prevention measure. Okay, I pay you the damage if you have done something to protect yourself. Because if you continue to insist in doing free-ranging livestock, sheep, there is no way we can solve the situation. Okay, wolves are still hunted. I have to go faster, sorry. Killed in big numbers. I don't have time to talk about poaching, but it's widespread everywhere. And large-scale issues are very, very important. The EU has a major impact on large carnivores in a positive way when through the Habitat Directive, Nature 2000, and so on. In a negative way, when in the agriculture department, they take decisions that affect large carnivores, and they don't even know that there is this link with large carnivores. When the health department decided, for example, that they had to introduce new rules for milk and cheese production, they didn't know that they would have killed immediately all the high pastures cheese factories. They disappear, which means less livestock to the wolves and the bears in the mountains. So And the most important thing is subsidies, of course. All livestock in Europe is subsidized. Until a few years ago was a head subsidies. Now it's not head, it's through acreage, but there's still a big impact on large carnivores. So the story of large carnivores in Europe is a success? Not really. It's not a success. I like to think that it's a lucky coincidence of biological and historical factors. We are actually helping the process in a way, but we are not really the major drivers of this process. All major conservation issues are not satisfactorily solved, and the current positive trends can be reversed. So where do we go from here? That's the second part. I do have some 15 minutes more? Good. There is no single recipe to manage wolf-human interface, even for bears. What is good for the bear conservation in Sweden is not good for the bear in Abruzzo. For many years, I have been hosting visitors from Finland, Sweden, Norway, coming to see how beautifully Italians coexist with wolves. I say, you are welcome, but we are not beautifully coexisting at all. It's a constant fight. And then what it works here actually doesn't work in your country. You have to find your own solution, every place, and not only every country, but even within a country. What is good for Calabria and southern Italy is not good for Abruzzo, it's not good for the Alps. So there must be different solutions. Local management solution, anyway, must be set in a context that works at a scale that has a meaning for the biological populations of these carnivores. And so we have been pushing, when I say we, is the Large Carnivore Initiative, we have been pushing for a population approach across Europe. Because the Habitat Directive forced individual countries to implement the Habitat Directive. So Italy has to take care of the wolves within the Italian territories. Forget about France, Switzerland, Austria, whatever. That doesn't make sense because the wolves are transboundary. So we have been pushing for a population approach, the alpine population. Now, we convinced the Commission, the European Commission, we produced a paper in 2008, guidelines for population level management plans. This is now one formal supporting document for the Habitat Directive implementation. So is an opportunity there. And of course, and we identified this so-called population. Now, as a biologist, we know that this is debatable. As I said before, for example, the wolf is just one European population. But so these populations have been identified on a biological, a demographic, and management peculiarities of each area. So this one makes sense to be on its own. This one here, for example, the Alps is very different from the Apennines. And so we do have 10 wolf population, and we do have another 10 bear population, 10 lynx, and just 2 for the wolverine. And this is an opportunity for countries. It's not mandatory, but it's an opportunity because the Habitat Directive tells you, Italy or France or Switzerland or whatever, not Switzerland, it tells you that you have to keep your endangered species, in this case wolf or wolf, at favorable conservation status. I'm sure some of you have been fighting with this concept, trying to understand what it means. And it's very difficult, and it's so difficult that at the moment there is an ad hoc group trying to sort it out in Brussels. And favorable conservation status, so you should keep your animals at favorable conservation status. But if you can work at population level, it's easier that you reach favorable conservation status because you can put the animals of both sides of the border together, and you more easily reach a favorable conservation status. But it's an extremely fuzzy concept. I don't want to go into that. It will require another hour of discussion. So what the future? I want to close with a few slides on this because the perspective is what is really most important for us. We could say that we won the battle. We have saved the species from extinction. You can't say that 17,000 wolves in Europe put the species at risk. 17,000 is a lot. So, so we saved. Now, how do we live with this success? It's not easy. Actually, we have to do something before the situation goes too far and backlash. So and then we do have a problems on the funding. So in our practice, we do have this basic 4 models available. That's conservation biology in peanuts. The wilderness paradigm, 10 minutes, yeah. Thinking of a Serengeti, a Yellowstone, a Kruger, whatever. No, Kruger, not because it's fenced, but anyone. Serengeti, huge areas, okay? We don't have them in Europe, so forget about this model. The human-dominated landscape and ecosystem management, fantastic, but there is not a 1 square meter in Europe that is without some human impact. So whatever approach we adopt under this model, we have to take into account humans there. The core buffer zone corridor model, the conservation biology model, classic. Yeah, we can apply that, but it's very, very theoretical. I'll come to that in a moment. Rewilding, well, rewilding is just a new repackaging of some old, well, I don't want to say more because I become too provocative on rewilding. And large areas, connectivity, keystone species, speaking of surrogate species, functions, there is a lot of science there. There is also a lot of values depending where you read about rewilding, depending on scientific or popular press. Protected areas, look at this, just to go very quickly. This is the size of protected areas in Europe. In continental Europe, we do have only 92 in this size range, between 100 and 1,000 square kilometers, okay? Just this, and only 3 above 1,000, okay? But if you look at the wolf, the home range of our species, wolf is between 100 and 1,000. In Italy, for example, the average home range for a wolf is 250. Bear, eat them, lynx. So the two don't match. The Natura 2000 system, fantastic start, nice, but as you know, they are very tiny piece of land. Certainly helpful, but not a solution for carnivore solution. So protected areas are valuable for large carnivore conservation, but they cannot be the main tool. May have a critical role in management strategy because it can be integrated in the overall matrix. Corridors. Corridor is a fantastic concept in ecology, but when you try to operate or make it operational, what do you do? What do you do? And especially when you speak of large carnivores, look at these bears in Scandinavia. Can you think of a corridor behind that? And when you think of our 2 wolves from Torino to Barcelona, from Torino to Bonn, is there any corridor? These are the corridor movement of wolves from Cuneo, southern Italy. One went to Monaco, Bavaria, another one to Switzerland, the other one and so. Where are corridors? In fact, to be blunt, wolves do not know corridors. They go everywhere. If you don't kill them, they would be anywhere. I don't mention Scotland. For example, this is a beautiful wolf habitat in Spain. This one, beautiful wolf habitat, again, Spain, but it could be southern France. When I say beautiful, it means that there is a resident, healthy population, pack, living there, thriving well. They are not degraded animals. They are not degraded. They are living well. These are the bears near Brașov in Romania. They normally come every night to feed on the dumps. And this is the wild bear population living in the mountains behind the city. Permanent fence, fencing, 5 minutes, try to rush. Fencing, not for conservation, really. That's not the conservation idea I've been fighting all my life. That's a sort of big safari zoo. And they cost a lot of money. You have to manage those populations all the time, killing surplus animals, mixing with, keeping the genetic viability and all that. I don't have time to go to that. So the solution is population viability and coexistence with humans. That's the crucial idea we have been selling for 20 years. You want a large carnivore in Europe? Don't segregate. They are the carnivores, here humans. You have to live together. And we do have a good example that this works. And it works in Italy, in Spain, in France, well, more or less in France, but it works in all the Dinaric, in Romania. It works everywhere. If you want to have it, that's the way to go. And this is a beautiful picture that my friend Leticia Navarro and Enrique Pereira, who may be here, I know he's going to talk later on, about the hotspot of abandonment in Europe in the next 30 years. There is a lot of room that will be available for large carnivores in the next few years. And so this recovering large carnivore population, how much should be allowed to expand? Think about this. How much? This is the historic wolf range in Europe. Is that what we want? Everybody would say, oh, no, of course. We don't want them in London or in Rome or down. So, okay, do we want them only in the mountains? No. So where? There must be an idea of how much we want them to expand. And a few years ago, with John Linnell, we wrote down these 7 steps of ecological complexity as targets for our recovery. The first one is just a species presence. We're just happy to know that the wolves are out there. Forget it. Most of the people probably will be happy with that. And could be 1 wolf, it could be 2, it could be 200 to 2,000, we don't know, but just the idea that is there. The second step is species viability. This wolf population reaches a level of viability now with all the fuzziness of the concept of viability, but forget about that. So it's not only 2, but there must be a number that is self-sustaining in the long run. The third level is some ecosystem process occurs that means the wolves eat deer and leave some carcasses. Is this enough as a target for rewilding, for restoration, for having animals out there? Probably yes. I don't know. I dare to say yes. It's for me. But you can choose. You can pick up the level you like. There are 7. So, but this is only the third. There are 4 more going up. The full guild of carnivores, wolves and lynx, and fifth, the natural fluctuation of these animals is allowed. So you're not there killing, introducing, maintaining, keeping, managing. You want these animals to be there free. The system is able to exist in a dynamic state. And the 7th, the evolutionary potential of the species is maintained. So what's the target that we want to fix when we reintroduce carnivores or when we manage carnivores? It's a value-based decision, of course, but it's actually constrained by the need to coexist. Coexistence is the crucial word if we want to maintain wolves in Europe. Coexistence means compromise. Compromise means that both parties give up something. We accept and tolerate some damage, do not get hysterical at the first cow that is killed, okay? And the wolf population is actually accept some taking, some removal. That means the people who love wolves accept that some of the wolves are killed. But you have to do that anyway, either through poaching or through some rational taking to keep the population at level. So not just how many wolves and bears, forget about numbers, but how much conflict is our society ready to pay for. That's important. How much England, how much Italy is ready to pay to keep wolves in Italy? 1 million, 2 million, whatever. Say a number, and I will work on that. But say a number, because that shows your commitment. So an economic and social carrying capacity complements the ecological carrying capacity, which implies limiting the potential ecological role of carnivores. It implies all our idea of having wild or wilderness out there, okay? And so that's the end, because this is our mission. The mission of the Large Carnivore Initiative, which says very, very clearly that we want to maintain and restore, even restoring, reintroducing, in coexistence with people, viable population of large carnivores, an integral part of our ecosystem landscape across. And with this, thank you very, very much again for inviting me. Look at that, 10:15.
Oh, Luigi, thank you very much. Another absolutely superb talk. Thank you. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Zoe Davies. I'm a biodiversity conservationist. I work at
to talk here, otherwise.
The Durrell Institute for Conservation and Ecology, University of Kent. I also am wearing my BES Meetings Committee hat, so if anybody has any feedback on the meeting, feel free to tap me on the shoulder at any point during the 3 days, and please let me know what you reckon. I've been given control of the BES iPad, so the power is mine. So we've got lots of great questions for you, Luigi. Can we start with one from Andrew Beckerman? Who could actually lead a cross-border large carnivore conservation and livestock program in Europe, and why haven't they?
No, what is needed is that the two countries sharing the transboundary population have to get together and prepare one management plan. That's very easy, and in the document I showed you before, in 2008, we drafted the sort of guidelines for making this transboundary management plan. So it's there. It's easy to do. And if you have a common management plan, then the European Commission will allow you to report on favorable conservation status at population level instead that at national level. It's very important.
Right, thank you very much. One from Darren Evans now. Should EU subsidies be used for large carnivore reintroduction and conservation rather than livestock production that's uneconomical?
Well, the significant change in the European Commission policies in this field happened actually a few months ago with the new rural development programs. For the first time, the Commission accepted that a number of actions in favor of carnivores can be paid using the funds of the rural development program. This is a major shift, including paying damage, paying compensation, paying for mitigation and prevention measure. Everything can be put under the rural development program. Until the last sessions of RDP, this was not possible. So it's a major change.
Okay, and one from Hazel Norman here. How do we change deep cultural antipathy towards large carnivores?
I don't have I don't know. I really don't know. It is true that if you know something, then you happen to learn more and appreciate more and love more and protect it more. But if you stick with your Little Red Riding Hood stories and background, then it's very, very difficult to change the attitude and changing the behavior. I think it is possible to brainwash people. I mean, we are brainwashed every day, to drink Coca-Cola or whatever, and so why we should do something more for large carnivores. Certainly we could, and be more blunt on this. But it's not easy. And there are entire countries, for example, Finland, Finland is a very good example. You can think of the Finnish stereotype as the big guy with a beard like that, very strong and fearless in the woods, in the snow, or whatever. I mean, that's the stereotype. Yeah? Well, Finland wrote a formal letter saying that Finnish people are afraid of wolves. That's why they want to kill it. So they are afraid. How can you say that? But they are. And there is no reason to be afraid. I told them, why don't you come to Italy? Why don't you come to the Abruzzo National Park? We do have one of the highest density of wolves, 9 per 100 square kilometer, and we have 2 million visitors. And never a single accident happens. So why are you afraid of wolves?
One from Andrew Stringer. Without national parks dedicated to wildlife conservation, can the UK ever reintroduce large carnivores?
But not even with a protected area. There is not a protected area that I know in UK that is large enough to maintain a population. So if you want to have large carnivores in UK, which I think you should think of coexisting over the overall matrix. Maybe some zoning, but zoning does not mean a small patch of a protected area. Zoning could be all of Scotland, for example. That could be a zone, or all of Wales, just to say something, not because there is any proposal behind that. But certainly you cannot think of having large carnivores in any of the European protected areas. They are just too small. You can do that if you fence these protected areas, then you kill the surplus, you manage the genetics, you manage the demography, you manage the prey population, you manage everything. It's a zoo. That's a zoo, in my opinion.
Okay, Will Gosling wants to ask, do we have any idea about European large carnivore densities in the past? So 100, 200, 6,000 years ago, pre-farming?
No. No idea at all. I can tell you that the average densities, it's amazing. The average densities of wolves, for example, over most of their range in Europe is actually the same as in North America. It's 2 per 100 square kilometer, which is fine. You can reduce that a little bit, but that's the average. With peaks, of course, and you have sometimes 6 or 7 or 8 per 100 square kilometer, but that's exceptions.
Okay, one from Josephine Walker. You mentioned the rapid expansion of carnivore populations. To what extent have these populations been through a genetic bottleneck?
Some of them through serious one, the Italian one, for example. In fact, the genetic variability of the Italian wolf is quite low. But not the others, not as far as the other, because in the end, they are all, it's one huge European population, so who knows what kind of mixing has been going on in the past before we invented radio collars or genetic monitoring.
Okay, and Rewilding Sussex wants to know why the obsession with numbers of predators, but isn't this important in terms of numbers and densities for ecological processes? Isn't that what scientists need to know?
No, say again.
So you mentioned the obsession people have with numbers of predators, but aren't numbers and densities and knowing this sort of information with regards to ecological processes very important? Not
really. I don't know. It depends what you want to know. Of course, the ideal for us academics is to know every single figures, how many exactly, to be able to put figures in all the functions between all our equations. That would be our ideal. Okay. In that sense, numbers are important. But when you go to practice, when you go to management of these large carnivores, then I think you can do without many of the figures. I mean, counting wolves is a hell of a job. Costs a lot of money. So as an ecologist, I'm very happy if the minister of some country say, oh, here is 5 million, please count my wolves. I should be very happy. But as a conservationist, I cry. How much more I can do with those 5 million? How much more? And this is the question for all of us when we think in terms of conservation. When I see project of fencing large areas and how much more you can do with those costs? And conservation needs desperately a lot of money for many other situations where that money makes a huge difference in conservation terms. That's just too much?
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Luigi, for a fantastic talk.
No, thank you.